Chris, welcome to the Democratizing SEO podcast. How are you doing today?
Yeah, not bad. Thanks very much. I've had a day off, so I'm feeling a little bit more refreshed than I usually would be at 4 p.m. on a Friday.
Thank you so much for your time. Happy Friday. I'll aim to have this within the hour, definitely. Chris, we're going to talk today about technical challenges communicated to business leaders. And I'm sure you have a lot to say around this, seeing as your technical SEO speaks quite often to business leaders. Now, before we get onto today's topic, as I like to do with all my SEO guests, I like to ask them how they got into SEO in the first place. So with that said, how did you venture into becoming an SEO professional?
So basically what happened was I got a job, just like pushing paperwork around, doing life insurance paperwork at a business near where I lived, because my qualifications are all in sound design and sound technology, right? So I thought, oh, well, I'll get a daytime job that will pay the bills while I go off and, fulfill my sound engineering career somewhere else. And that was, and then what happened was I got made redundant from that job. But during the redundancy process, I heard about this SEO thing. There was a space on the team back when it was a really low level job, really. And I think basically the company just gave me that job because it looked better than making me redundant, right? And so I moved over into SEO. And I just kind of fell into it. And that was 15 years ago or something now. And I've just kind of refused to leave.
You're a technical SEO. Why technical? What do you think it is about your personality and character that lends itself nicely to technical?
So I think if I was a couple of years younger, I would be a JavaScript developer now, or a web dev of some variety, right? I've always been interested in how things work. My dad's a mechanic. And again, he never went to school or anything to learn how to fix cars. He just kind of learned by taking cars apart. And I've always been the same. It's always fascinated me how things work. And the bit that when I started learning about SEO was learning, well, hey, I get the high level concept stuff, but I want to learn. I feel like I learn better when I know the full how the sausage is made. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I just wanted to learn everything I could about how the web work, how I went from typing in whatever I'm typing into Google into being on the web page. You know what I mean? I wanted to know the entire thing, and so technical just always appealed for that reason.
Now, tech SEO is one of those areas where SEOs are guilty of speaking SEO especially to business leaders. How often do you communicate with business leaders as a tech SEO person?
So in my current role, not as much. So right now, I'm a professional services member of member of the professional services team at Lumar. So we tend to interact with most clients kind of directly with their SEO teams. But with certain clients, you will get the director of marketing on the call, or sometimes a product head or something like that. Whereas in my previous job, I had way more face-to-face time with our marketing director, managing director. So when you're in-house, you tend to have a little bit more connection with these people. You know, when you're agency side, you do tend to speak directly to the SEOs, and the best you can hope for is a head of department or something. But yeah, I spent 10 years in-house, right? More than that, nearly 15 years in-house. So a fair amount.
What are some of the frustrations you've experienced and also heard from SEOs in-house that business leaders have about technical information communicated to them?
I mean, the big thing is always, right, like, is you will catch something, say, as part of a migration that would have meant, or as part of, just any ticket that would have, removed the site from the index, or had some sort of calamitous effect. And because you raise it and you get it fixed, it doesn't go wrong, right? And you think to yourself, I've done a great job there, thank God for me, right? But then you'll hear from the marketing director or whoever, I don't know what Chris does. He just seems to, he's just this black box. And this was a problem that I used to have. I often think we're a little bit like security teams in that regard, where if everything's going fine, you don't hear about us, right? You only hear about us when we've done something wrong and something calamitous has happened, right? And in the same way that when you do hear from us, it's stuff that you don't understand, right?
Yeah. What do you think influences business leaders to be receptive then?
I mean, the big thing, the easy thing, obviously, is trying to talk money wherever you can, right?
Right.
You know, I've learned for a long time, especially when page speed was all the rage a few years ago. You can talk page speed at a marketing director, but so we used to have issues where I used to work where our page speed was actually pretty good, but it was ads. It was always third party ads that would drag the page speed down. So I would say, we need to do this, we need to do this. And they would say, well, okay, is that going to make the 100 grand a year we make on ads back? And I'd go, no, it's not at 20p a click or whatever. You know what I mean? So there's always that side, and you do have to be able to pick your battles. But I think, you just have to explain. Like, you can't go to a marketing director and be like, oh, there's a canonicalization issue, there's an href flag issue on these pages. You have to say, like, hey, there's a problem on these pages that potentially is going to remove them from the index, or mean that the German page is going to rank in Spain, or whatever. That they understand, because that they can in their own mind equate to, well, that'll reduce conversion, right? Or that will affect the bottom line somehow. And that's what. At the end of the day, that's what their job is, right? They understand the money. They're not there to understand the technology.
I often relate technical SEO, especially with tech jargons, to being a language in itself. And when I was in my younger years as an SEO, I used to wonder, SEO was so interesting to me. I love every facet of it. Why can't business leaders just spend the time to learn this language? Right. So I put the question to you. What do you think the answer to that is?
I think going back to, you asking before about why do we, how do you get into SEO, and, what drove me to tech SEO? It's the same thing again, right? In my mind, I Google things like 100 times a day or whatever. You know what I mean? Why would I not want to know a little bit about how I then get into what happens, right? In the same way that, every time I hop in my car, why would I not want to know a little bit about how that works, right? So I think, as SEOs, we've always had that interest in how things work, and I think quite a lot of the time, in terms of, I think a lot of brains like systems, and it's just the system that you connect to, right? So, like, for a lot of business leaders and stuff like that, the system they like is business, right? They like, oh, okay, well, if we encourage this team to do that, does that drive, does that drive productivity over here and things like that? Obviously we're in this situation at the moment where you've got a lot of CEOs. Some of them are saying we need people back in the office 3 days a week. Whereas other people are saying, oh, well, actually, no, we don't, because we're just as productive. That's their A/B testing, right? That's what we do. It's just that's the system they like, and the system they like is people. And unfortunately for us, their system normally is financially better for them as well. So,
technical SEO challenges, right? They are also business challenges. How is this true?
So I think that, again, the biggest and simplest thing in that regard is if you have, a perfect case in point, right? A client that we work with at the moment, they are, they're not quite this space, but if I say their job listings, you'll kind of get the idea of how it works, right? There's hundreds, tens or maybe hundreds of thousands of pages, all in a big database somewhere. And they want to be able to rank for jobs in California, jobs in New York, jobs in specific cities in those states and things like that. But when we first came in, they were ranking for nothing, right? Because that section of their site, or that microsite, was completely unindexable for one reason or another. And they could have built links into it. And done as much in terms of content and things like that, and done all the other PR stuff you could have done, but ultimately at the end of the day, we've taken them from. I think we're at a point now where they've got about 50,000 pages indexed, something like that, and you can see that as the page is indexed, those clicks go straight through the roof. And okay, yes, your conversion rate is going to come down a little bit the more traffic you start getting in, but they've gone from literally zero, nothing, no pages indexed, no traffic, to 3,000-4,000 clicks a day. That for any business, right? That makes money. You know what I mean? Even at a 1% click-through rate or 1% conversion rate, you're making money on that. So that's the big thing. And then you can get into, a lot of tech SEO stuff is very adjacent to other areas. So, page speed's great. Tom Capper from Moz has this interesting thing that basically, so page speed, it feels like was the latest in a long line of things that didn't make much difference to rankings, but Google said they would, because it's better for Google if everybody has a nice fast website. But also, when you're on a train, or whatever, try using the web, and it's amazing the sites that you start to prefer because you know that they work when you're on a train. Because page, right? And then again, because of that, you then start, they're the sites that you start to prefer, they're the sites that you start to buy from. Same with things like accessibility. A lot of accessibility issues are making it easier for a computer or a program to look at a web page and understand what it is. That's what Google is, right? So all these things, some of them, canonical tags, hreflang tags, they are SEO issues ultimately, and if you fix them, you make more money. But then there's all these other things elsewhere that overlap and help, and they aren't just specifically tech SEO issues, but they all of them come together to make people convert better and be able to use your site. And ultimately, more people you get on your site, the more whatever your business model is, the more money you make, right? So.
See, now, as you were explaining all of this, it sounds beautiful to me. It's music to my ears, right? And I'm thinking to myself, why can't certain business leaders just understand this? I mean, it makes sense to me. I don't know if it's because we're SEOs, but to me, it's logical, perfect sense, right? For SEOs, whether in-house or even agency side, what language should they be using to communicate, let's say exactly what you just said, right, to business leaders? Is it a case of we need to remove the SEO from what we're saying, or something else?
So, I think in a lot of instances, yeah. An interesting thing. So, I mean, to take accessibility as an interesting part of this, and a lot of SEOs are currently, sort of starting to understand how just doing standard accessibility things helps SEO and vice versa. My old boss, Ashley Berman-Hale, used to say there's 3 reasons to do accessibility, right? Either you're a nice person, right? And you just want people to be able to use your site, right? So you do accessibility, right? Or let's say next up, you're just super business focused, right? Well, if your site is accessible, then more people can use your site, right? So again,
right.
And then third, maybe you're a total asshole and you don't care and you don't want people, you don't want differently able people to be able to use your site. Well, guess what? That's just going to get you sued, right? So ultimately, it's in your remit to want to do these things. And yeah, like I said earlier, I think a lot of it just comes down to, especially if you're interfacing directly with, CEOs, C-level people, CTOs, SEOs tend to end up having to, especially tech SEOs, end up having to go up to. It needs to be, a CTO is sometimes interesting because they quite often will speak megabytes. And if you can say to them, this page, we could make this page 80% lighter, they can work out in their head what that means for the AWS bill, right? And then that's the thing. But again, ultimately, that's money. It comes back to money, right? If anyone's got that C in their name, in their job title, it's money they're going to be concerned about, and you have to find a way to convert it back, or speak to your manager. Maybe you've got a chain of 2 or 3 people, and hopefully throughout that chain, it becomes money on the way up. Or, I was going to say as well, another thing that you can do if you have the ability to do it is use case studies, and and say, well, hey, X business did this, and it provided Y benefit to them. Although what I was going to say about that is, so I used to work for a company that had multiple sites, and there was a few times where we kind of went, well, hey, our sister business over there made this change. Absolutely brilliant for them. X and Y has improved. We did it and saw nothing. So, and I think sometimes as well, this is a little bit why business leaders can be a bit nervous about some SEO things, because you've got it's just not just a lever, right?
Right. It's very based on one's situation, one's current situation. Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, and you say, oh, you need to do this, and they go, well, how long will it take? And you're like, well, it's going to take a dev a week, and they go, okay, and what's the benefit at the back of it? And sometimes the best you've got is more, hopefully. When? Maybe in 6 months.
Yeah. Something I'm noticing a lot of SEOs doing now is associating costs to benefits or time, right? So thinking of benefits in terms of 3 key business areas, either saving time, making money, or saving money, right? So they associate cost to one of those 3 areas. And it's very difficult, not accurate. It can come back to bite you in the backside. But I think it's quite a good idea, because it at least puts numbers into what we're doing, right? And it can get you into, let's say, in months or years time, making it accurate, more better, essentially optimizing it. In terms of what you guys at Lumar do to help SEOs, especially when it comes to quantifying technical challenges, what do you guys do to help SEOs to achieve this and explain it to C-suite members?
So we've got a few things. We do actually have part of the product now, which we call Impact, which basically so we split the health of a site into sort of like indexability, availability, uniqueness, different kind of sections like that. We then give a score out of 100. Yes, it's an arbitrary, algorithmic score that we've designed, but we're SEOs. We love arbitrary algorithmic scores, right? That's our whole job.
Something to work off.
Yeah. And basically the idea being that, the CEO might not understand what that number means, right? But he can see, hey, we put a release live last week and now that number's gone from 89 to 64. That must be bad, right? Mm-hmm. So we do that. And then just the other side of things is what's interesting for us is it really varies how we work from client to client. So for some clients, we are almost the complete SEO function, really. And then for other clients, we are kind of a small part of an enormous SEO team, you know what I mean? So it really varies from time to time. Like for some clients, we just write, we do a lot of story writing. And again, going back to what you were saying before about saving time, our benefit in that regard is, well, we just write all the SEO stories. So the SEO team in-house can carry on focusing on this thing over here, the migration or whatever, while all the stories go into the devs and things like that. So again, we can help save time, like you say. We can help fix issues. And by providing things like these scores, we can say, well, hey, this has happened. I mean, before I worked at Lumar, my old business was a client, and I kind of jerry-rigged my own version of the impact scores before we had them, before I went on my paternity leave, because I took quite a long time paternity leave, and essentially said to the rest of the SEO team, right, this is going to run once a week, and if this line goes up or goes down, panic and find somebody. If it stays flat, right, then don't worry so much about it, right? And that's kind of what you need to do. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I say it sometimes, and I hope it doesn't sound derogatory or too flippant, but CEOs understand lines going up and down, right? So you need to provide them a line going up and down to make them understand that something bad or good has happened.
Right. You've been an SEO a tech SEO professional for like over 15 years, as you said earlier. I'm sure you have crazy tech SEO stories. What are some of the craziest ones that you can share, either good or bad? I
mean, the big one is, the big easy one is, people putting new sites live while leaving the no index tags in them.
Right.
That's a favourite. That exclusively happens on Friday afternoons where they haven't told you for some reason. That's the only time that ever happens. Then you've got the classic, our new site goes live next week. Did we not tell you? No, you didn't say it. No, right, okay. Yeah. Personal ones. So we used to use an A/B testing platform at an SEO A/B testing platform that I won't name just in case because they probably don't want to be associated with what I'm about to say. I accidentally, basically the entire site would return just a blank white page, thanks to my poor use of this A/B testing tool, and it was like that for about an hour and a half while I went to get lunch. And that's not even a bad tech SEO thing, right? That's just bad at working for a website, right? I've seen plenty of things get hacked in weird ways that not only a tech SEO, but that tech SEOs are best ways to find, or best things to find. All sorts of weird stuff. I say, unfortunately, I wish some of them were funny, but most of them are just, from an SEO point of view, terrifying. You know what I mean? Yeah. Say like it is always, we did this, we did this while you were off. Why did you do it while I was off?
Yeah.
Well, again, CEO didn't want to wait. Okay, we've de-indexed half the website now, but okay, that's fine. We did also once, in the place that I used to work, we had a huge forum that over time just kind of, broadly speaking, what actually happened was we bought a community website that included a forum. So kind of we sunsetted our one, and that had returned a 410 for years. Now, a 410, if you're not as up on your status codes as me, 410 means gone, right? That says to Google, it's not just you can't find it like a 404. This is a 410. This is gone. This is never coming back. The forum returned a 410 for about 2-3 years, something like that. And then one day somebody accidentally changed the order of some rules in Cloudflare or something like that. And all of a sudden the forum came back, and within about 2 days, the entire thing was re-indexed. Hundreds of thousands of pages that had been de-indexed for 2 or 3 years, just suddenly. And it's like, it was a lesson in that, hey, Google never actually forgets. It never forgets things. Once it knows about them, you can manage it, but you can never make it forget things.
Absolutely. Some tech SEO challenges seem rather small, right, compared to like the big business agenda or whatever's going on at a company. I saw on your LinkedIn page, you have an interesting story of how badly implemented canonical tags can lead to customers getting their credit cards data stolen. What is the story behind this?
So I'm going to hold my hands up a little bit to that being a little bit of clickbait, but it's not impossible, right? So effectively, and again, this is the sort of thing where a tiny little SEO thing, and it's not just canonical tags this can happen with. It can happen in a few different ways, but quite often canonicals is an easy way to do it. So effectively, quite often what a good tech SEO will say to a dev during their during a migration or a new site or whatever, all the pages need to have a canonical tag, and it needs to be, they might misword it and say whatever's in the address bar needs to be the canonical tag. And devs, I've learned after a long time now, are very, very good at taking things super literally.
Right.
And
oh yeah,
they will. Yeah. And so they won't think about the fact that, I don't want the URL with 25 parameters on tracking parameters and everything on the end to be the canonical version. What I want is site.com/page. That's what I want. And because we're SEOs, we don't tend to think about parameters too much, because we're just normally, we crawl something in our crawler and we go, well, that's all the URLs, isn't it? So let's say now, this site now canonicalizes to whatever is put in that address bar. So that now means that within the code of the page, we have site.com, blah, blah, blah. Basically, via the address bar, you now have the ability to edit a little bit of the site, right? Or a little bit of the page, just on your own personal, on your computer. You're not. This isn't hacking. This can affect then what appears on your screen. So then, what that means is, and quite often this will get caught by Cloudflare and things like that. But if you pop in a little bit of HTML to terminate that canonical tag, and then pop in a little bit more to open a script tag, and then write a little bit of JavaScript, that then can get pushed into the head of the page. Now, I only bring this up as parameters is because quite often parameters, or not often, but sometimes parameters don't get sanitized as well as other things. Because sometimes parameters will include weird characters, right? Because they've got tracking details in them, or referring URLs, stuff like that. So there's a little bit more lenience around what the characters are in it. So then what happens is you're now at a point where we've closed that canonical tag and we've now opened a script tag, at which point you can do broadly anything you like to the page that's on the user screen. Now, the other thing to bear in mind now is that this problem can be transferred. You can send a link to somebody with this stuff in, especially if you use a URL shortener or something like that. You can then send that link to somebody, and they might not see it. If they're on a phone, the address bars, if anyone's listening to this, it's I'm holding my fingers up. It's the address bar's 2 inches long, right? You can't see all of the parameters on the end of that. So now, at this point, you've got a little bit of JavaScript in there, and you could maybe change it so that submit button, or enter your details and hit submit. That now goes to somewhere else, right? That goes to your clients or whatever. Let's say it's a product page. You put in your credit card details, you hit pay. That no longer goes off to Amazon or, whoever you are. That then just broadcasts those details to the web. And again, credit card details, to be totally clear, I've not tested this with credit card details. I'm not crazy. But you know what I mean? You can, once you've started passing information, the whole thing about your identity being parts of a puzzle, right? Once someone works out your address, they can work out other things from that and then start building from there, right? So you can then basically edit the page to get people to send that information through, right? And then all of a sudden, this isn't necessarily a tech SEO issue, but by a little tech SEO requirement over here that you thought was great, and maybe the site goes live with the parameter issue, and you kind of think, oh, well, it's not that bad an issue. It's like, well, a chain of events can then, cause problems. And I mean, ultimately, you probably don't want this canonical issue in the first place, but this is kind of where it can lead to. But it does require 4 or 5 people down the line to have not done their job perfectly. But I think it's fascinating. There's a few different ways in which security and SEO kind of butt heads, and I think it's the most interesting thing on earth.
Yeah, as do I. I mean, it's very telling how SEOs, we see the business impact of SEO issues, but it's difficult for non-SEOs to see it. It's mind-boggling to me sometimes, because to me it's just business, right? It's just a part of the business that we're responsible for, and we can see the chain of events from this little small thing, canonical tag, being a huge business issue, but communicating it is the challenge sometimes for SEOs, especially when you consider SEOs. We work, I would say, reactively by default, right? SEO by default is a reactive channel. There is this train of thought, right, that SEO is only reactive and should only be used as a reactive channel. And it's quite an issue from a technical point of view, because then you have technical issues that has to occur first before being resolved. And then you're relying on speed. Okay, how quickly can we resolve this issue? Whereas if you use a more proactive approach, you can prevent something from happening in the first place. What should SEOs be doing to encourage businesses to be more proactive with their SEO, and rather than looking at it as, okay, we had this issue, it's fixed, and that's the end of it?
I think the big thing for me, and this is a thing that, and I'm gonna, so this is interesting, right? So I'm a big believer in being able to work from home or wherever you particularly want to, right? But what I'm about to say counteracts that. So I do have to kind of say that in this regard, I am a little bit of a hypocrite, right? So in my old job, when I joined, SEO had a reputation as being cowboys. Do anything for a link, blah, 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 blah. And because, to be frank, we did a few things where we just kind of got round, we found innovative ways to get round being told no for things, right? So we didn't have the best reputation. Over time, what I did in that job was I spoke just enough marketing to explain to the developers what marketing wanted. And I spoke enough development to explain to marketing that, well, actually, this isn't, I know it seems easy, but in this particular circumstance, it's not easy, right? It does require a lot of work because this is plumbed into that or whatever. But that maintaining a relationship with developers, and the reason I say about working in the office is because I used to sit on the end of the bank of desks with developers, is great because the more visible you are as someone who understands these things, the more people come to you and go, we're making this change. And what you then start to find is you're batting off a lot of sort of irrelevant questions because, they'll be like, oh, we're making this change. Does that affect SEO? And you think, well, how could that affect SEO? But I would rather you ask me than just, than because that means that at some point you are going to say, we've got to do this. Is this going to affect SEO? And you say, yeah, this would be a really bad idea. Actually, let's not do it. Right. So you can do that. I think quite often what helps with that is every month or whatever, make sure that your C-suite and your business leaders know just how much SEO is contributing in terms of traffic. So again, where I used to work, we were like 60, 70% SEO. It was a travel affiliate business, basically, right? So it was almost all our traffic was people typing in cheap holidays to Spain or whatever, right? So being able to say, well, we're 60% of traffic and you don't run changes past us. What do you think might happen, right?
Right.
And then the other side of it is most devs, like good devs, they want to do a good job. They want to make a good website, right? Because they're tradesmen at the end of the day, right? In the same way that the guy you get in to fit your kitchen doesn't want to do a bad job at the end of the day, right? So they come to you as an expert and go, we've heard you've got all these tools that can tell us, how fast the page is or give us an idea about what needs moving in order to do all this. And then the other side of that as well is being useful. And I say this not just as somebody who works for a crawler. Very few people in the business have a piece of software available to them that just lets them crawl and search a website. Every year, again, working in travel, there's certain regulations and things. Every year we would have to go through and update the year from 2022 to 2023. A crawler is a great piece of software to do that with, right? So you could do that, or especially if you're in a very heavily regulated space, you might get the legal team being like, "Hey, we need to find every mention of this type of product because we're not allowed to call it that anymore." So again, when I used to work in life insurance, some of the stuff around like salary protection and critical illness cover, they're very, very specific about the very specific names you're allowed to give them. So it would be like, right, well, we need to do a tour of the site because some well-meaning content writer over here wrote, critical illness cover when what they meant was salary protection. We need to make sure there's no more on the site. So you just become useful everywhere, and you become known then as the person who can find this stuff, or the person who knows about page speed. And I think just making yourself more visible means that naturally just the business thinks about SEO more when it comes to doing anything, right? Because or ultimately they think, well, we best check with Chris, otherwise he's going to make a big noise about it when we release it and get it wrong, right? So
Right. What is it like working client side and having several teams, departments, or individuals come to you for SEO related question pertinent to their area?
I mean, I've always quite liked it because I've got a bit of a complex that I think nobody cares about what I think, right? So having high ups in the security team or whatever come over and ask you questions is fantastic. Obviously, you do start to, like I was saying before, having to field a lot of kind of irrelevant questions that don't make any, oh, we want to upgrade Ruby from, this version to that version. Will that affect SEO? No, of course it won't. But again, I'd rather you ask. So for me, who's always worried that people don't care what he thinks, it's nice to feel important. Let's say that.
Do you find now that you work for Lumar that the training aspect of SEO to non-SEOs is required to a certain extent, or when you are even client side, having worked with different teams?
Yeah, it's obviously different teams, different things are relevant to different teams, but a little bit of, for a content team, here's how to write a link that means I'm not going to come and have to fix it in a few weeks.
Right.
Because again, teaching content teams will take all the parameters off that link before you put it in that press release or whatever, because they don't need to be there, right? Or again, with devs, SEO and devs butt heads a lot. And quite often it's because developers we forget, we haven't taught them. Nobody was born knowing this stuff, right? So, you hear sometimes about how developers have found some new and crazy way to write a link, right? And we kind of go, well, why not just write href equals blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. And, well, yeah, but it's quite a long system, you know what I mean? And they've got, developers nowadays HTML is a byproduct of JavaScript nowadays for a lot of developers, right? So they think in JavaScript first. Now, say to me, to be frank, it does still seem crazy the way that some developers will find to write a link, but nobody taught them this, right? So being able to teach them these things is huge. And again, UX, right? Some of the things, and not so much now. I think we're as we move on, we're beginning to UX is getting a little bit more canonized in terms of how it works. And we've decided that certain things do work better than others. But if you were around on the web in 2010, 11, UX teams were finding some fun and crazy ways of showing you a nav, right?
Yeah.
And so being able to say to the UX team, well, no, we need more than 3 links in this navigation, or whatever. And they can't just be, our main product page link can't just be a picture of a dog. You know what I mean? It needs to say, it needs to have words. So, yeah, just little things, I think, for a lot of teams goes a huge way, because in the same way that, like I was saying before, if you understand a little bit about web development, more than anything, it helps you write better stories and it helps you better communicate with developers what you want. Mm-hmm. And they need to remember that you aren't born knowing how GitHub works. You're not born knowing knowing the difference between React and Gatsby or whatever. So it goes both ways. But yeah, it's a huge thing. But for each individual person in the business, it's just a slight tweak. Again, security. Security want to block this page. Oh, well, don't do that. Why? Or if they block robots.txt, because then maybe they've got a report that says robots.txt is a thing. They want to block robots.txt. Okay. Oh, well, if you do that, Google will just crawl anything it wants because it just assumes that everything's fine. You know what I mean? So little bits of training for the correct teams goes a huge way.
Yeah. Yeah. SEOs and developers, we have a special kind of relationship, and it's particularly developers, like SEOs, content writers, in the early days, around about 2010, 11, 12, just around the period where we had Panda update. We butted heads a lot, SEOs and content creators. I think now we're at a good place, but developers, we just stay at odds.
I think that the issue is we both work in, especially in if you're a pure tech SEO, SEOs in general, but especially with tech SEO, we have this huge sphere of knowledge, right? And some of it, well, each of us has these huge spheres of knowledge, but they do cross over. but they cross over in almost opposite ways. And the big problem that we have is that, and I don't blame devs for this, is quite often a dev team will be like, but this is the easy way to do it. And you have to be like, I know, but this is the weird, complicated way that Google wants you to do it. And if 60% of our traffic comes from Google, then we just kind of got to do it that way. Sorry.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing is demonstrating to them that you're not asking for these things for a laugh. You know what I mean? You're asking for it because Google has said this is the way it should be done.
Yeah, totally. Chris, when communicating with a business leader, if the SEO did this, they would get buy-in every time. What would this be?
I don't want to reiterate myself and say talk money, but I think quite often it has to be talk money or talk traffic. Maybe traffic is easier for SEOs because we have that information a little bit more readily available to us. And most business leaders can equate, they know what their conversion rate is, right? You've got to talk those metrics. Talk business metrics to business, because that's what they are. They're business people. You have to talk business numbers, business words to them and business things. Talk traffic, talk money, talk, as you said before, time saved, efficiencies. It's actually, it's an interesting thing that it's only occurred to me as you said it, that even for agency or ProServe or whatever, discussing time saved is a huge thing, because ultimately, I suppose, as a for instance, you might be trying to get all your metadata to be automated as part of your blog. It's like, well, what's the benefits in this? It's like, well, if we get it automated, then it means the content team don't have to write it. There's a bit of time saved. It means the content team won't get 10, 20% of it wrong, and that's no dig at content teams. It's not their job to know the exact in and outs of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So then they won't get it wrong. Yeah. We won't then have to spend time crawling it to find those errors, then time writing tickets to get that stuff raised, and then that content team won't then have to go back in and then fix those errors, etc., etc., etc. It's a circular thing. Let's instead just get one guy or one dev to spend a week doing this, and then that's it fixed forever, right? Perfect example. In my old job, we had a site. On the blog. Once every it was the blog. Once every, maybe twice a year, maybe 3 times a year, the content of a blog post would appear in our site footer, and nobody knew why. And the devs were absolutely certain it was the content team somehow putting it there. And I kind of thought, well, I know the CMS pretty well, and I don't know how you would do that if you wanted to do it. Never mind accidentally do it. You know what I mean? And it was this thing because I was the only person who kind of knew how to fix the footer back to how it was. But it would be like, well, 2 or 3 times a year, I have to spend an afternoon rebuilding the footer. Okay, it's only a day and a half a year. But if we didn't do this, and it would stop us looking stupid 3 times a year when we've got, come to Marbella on your holidays in the footer of the site. I think I've got massively off topic on here. Sorry.
No.
But I think
it's on point.
Yeah. Or that's the other thing. Scare them, right? Show them, hey, this site
that works as well.
This site did this, and they got a penalty, right? You know what I mean?
Fear marketing works. It's a thing. Do you sometimes have a look at websites, right, and see the messiness of it from a technical point of view, and tell, okay, internally that company, that business, they don't have a good relationship or a streamlined relationship between developers and SEOs? Can you tell just by looking at a site?
Yeah, quite often. And I think as well, you can, what's definitely very obvious, what's very obvious is you can tell where SEO have no contribution to tech whatsoever. That's immediately stands out. Sometimes you will catch SEO doesn't get much prioritized because they'll have certain things and you'll think, well, this bit works over here, but this thing over here doesn't do, it isn't working properly, or clearly worked properly at some point but is now broken. And that's actually, now I say it, that's a good sign as well, is where you can kind of tell that there used to be a system here, but it's now degraded. That means that stuff has been built on top of it. An SEO might have been involved in that initial spec out, but they've not been involved in version 1.5, 1.6, 1.7. Yeah, it is quite often very obvious. And or sometimes as well, what you find is the sites with huge issues, you can get to the point where you start to spot, this is an external build. This build's been outsourced.
Right.
So you start looking at the site, you find all these issues, and then you're waiting on the initial call with the client for them to say, oh, well, this has been built by a separate agency. And then you go, this feels like it. And then there's no internal SEO, in-house SEO in the company. They've not checked it over, and now we are where we are, right? I see that a lot.
For, let's say, a business doesn't have a specific CTO in place, what should they be doing to ensure that they integrate SEO better into the various departments, especially the dev department?
So the biggest thing I would do is take your tech SEO, or the most technical SEO that you've got, and put them on the end of the bank of desks with your devs, or make sure they're going to the front end dev scrums. And again, make sure that person then is not afraid to put their hand up in the dev scrum and go, there's SEO implications there. Even sometimes if you have a CTO, right, you've just got to make noise. You've got to be visible. And yeah, that's what I would do, is I would fight to get somebody who knows the most tech SEO stuff within your team, and just get them everywhere they can where there's potential changes being made to the site. I think that's a huge thing, because again, then those tech SEOs, they will catch things that maybe the content team are having problems with, or et cetera, and they will then understand how to take that issue and turn it into a dev story. Content team are having this problem. Okay, cool. Well, I speak, and I say this used to be my job. I speak dev enough to know that what you actually want is blah, 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 right? And then you build that workflow through.
Well said, Chris. Well said. Where can people find you online?
I guess two places nowadays. LinkedIn, just Chris Spann, that's Spann. And do we have to call it X? Can I call it Twitter?
With Twitter. Until they change
the Bluebird
URL,
one, anyway.
Until they change the URL, I'm sticking with Twitter.
Yeah, until I'm forcibly redirected, it's Twitter. I'm on Twitter. I don't tweet very often. At 503 Blaze It, and also chris-spann.co.uk, where I write weird stuff about potential ways that you can make security holes in your sites via SEO.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Chris. Thank you so much for your time.
No problem.
Have a brilliant day. I'm sure we'll catch up again another time.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.